because this is the last panel for us. This is kind of the last of this week, and not only of this week, but it's a long way of these 6 weeks of all of you and others doing amazing work, and which we look forward to hear about now. And I should still say there's still some events coming from other people that couldn't, for one or another reason, do them before then. So it seems like World Localization Day celebrations continue for the rest of June. So this has been an amazing effort from people in 30 countries, and I don't know, don't have the count of how many organizations that are now involved. So we tried to get a representative mix here with you. Thank you so much, and for all that you have done. And I think I speak for everybody at Local Futures when I say we are really, really happy, and nourished and encouraged and inspired from all that's been going on. And it's at these difficult times, I think that gives real hope for the future. So just in terms of the flow here, we'd said to all of you that if you could please start with a short introduction, like 2 minutes, about either what's going on in your country or what you've been doing around World Localization Day, or both. And then after that, we were going to move into a conversation and, with your thoughts, well, and also our thoughts on that, how can we move the movement forward? So we're looking for ideas and suggestions, proposals from you. And of course, we'll also chip in. And then we'll have a reflection and comment about that afterwards. So I don't know if you want to say anything, Helena, add to this?
Well, I've just been talking in a webinar earlier, and well, generally, about how remarkable it is that there is so much going on at the grassroots that is about healing our communities and healing the land. And I just had this great joy yesterday to discover that there is a farmers market right in our area. It's only half an hour away. And I didn't know about it. I've been telling people I've started the farmers market in this area because I've started or helped to start the 4 big ones. But there's a smaller one that's been going on for 2 years that I didn't even know about. And that is really what I want all of us to be aware, that there is so much more to celebrate than we are led, we're encouraged to believe and to think about. And of course, to have you join us here and share with all what you've been doing is part of this. And I just wish we could gather up more. And part of the thinking, I think, today is, how can we do this? How can we really pay attention to and nurture and strengthen these grassroots initiatives around the world? But anyway, also join in what Anja was saying, to say how happy we are and how grateful we are for your joining into this particular day program of ours, the World Localization Day. And I'm sure we'll continue to collaborate for next year, and somehow we'll figure out jointly how we can grow this movement, make it even bigger.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We won't wait until next year to collaborate. Hopefully there'll be lots going on in between. So if the way we did it on our last call, and it seemed to work very well, is that one of you starts, whoever wants, and then you hand over to somebody else. No, you say a name, and then that next person. So I don't have to do that, interfere the flow. Who wants to go first?
Me.
No hand. Yes, Patricia. Gracias.
Well, thank you. I will read it. It's easier for me in English. Thank you very much for inviting Mexico to be part of this global movement. I am Patricia Moguel, ecologist, environmental educator, and activist in the defense of human, women, and nature's rights. Mexico creates the Global to Local Coalition with 9 collaborators for its contributing to World Localization Day, and celebrates with a total of 12 events, 4 face-to-face and 8 virtual events. The face-to-face events were May 15, local food feast in support to World Localization Day, hosted by Tosepan Titataniski. They exchange local products and heritage seeds to celebrate the biocultural diversity of the region. June 9, Miguel Ángel Escalona hosts Feeding Ourselves from the Local with Our Culture and Biodiversity. Also, on June 17 until now, his agroecologist platform with municipalities, authorities organized Reactiva Jalapa by promoting local consume mainly in urban areas. June 12, we have the Market to the Earth, hosted by Tlatelolco Urban Horticulture and Jimena Celis. The virtual events are May 27, Jimena was the host of How to Build Strategies for Local Food Economies in Urban Areas, with the participation of 5 active groups in urban gardens. June 3rd, Rocio Garcia was the host of Responses and Challenges of Sustainable Food Webs, 1 year after the COVID pandemic, with the participation of 6 rural and urban organizations. June 4th, Diego Pascual, an indigenous Nahuatl, was the host of a welfare life with the participation of 3 other ethnic groups, Tojolobales, Mayas, y Totonacos. Also, Diego held an interview with a family producer of one of the most important local products, panela, an unrefined sugar produced by traditional methods. June 1st, Miguel Ángel Escalona organized a virtual event called Young People Building the Local World, and on June 16, a conversatory webinar works from the local. Mayol Hernandez held an interview with Rufina Villa, an indigenous woman leader from Puebla, who has defended their territories against corporate power. His Bioma Civil Association have been creating all the audiovisual materials that have some of them already been uploaded to the local futures page. Violeta Campos has built our internet page and virtual platform from global to local economies. And finally, the Global to Local Coalition Mexico was coordinated by Patricia Moguel and with a nearest collaboration with Anja. Thank you very much. I hope I am in time.
Absolutely, and thank you so much. And it's just wonderful to see how much you were able to do in such a short period. Thank you, Patricia. And whom would you nominate to speak next?
I need to, can I see the names, please?
Well,
because
you could ask Keibo.
Keibo, where is Keibo? Keibo, yes, Keibo.
Keibo and Patricia have collaborated a lot in the past, so they know each other.
You had to
well.
unmute yourself, Keibo.
Okay. Good morning again. It's 9:30 here, and it's actually the day. This is the longest day of the year today. Traditionally, it's a very important day for us. And the last 20 years, I have been organizing with my colleagues something called Candle Night Movement, where everybody at night for 2 or 3 hours, we light candle and turn off all the lights. Just that. So this is a very special day for me. And also traditionally, we have been celebrating this day with all kinds of rituals. And I'm sure that is well connected with celebrations all over the world. Anyway, June 12th, it was our Localization Day, Japan. And it was quite a success, I would say. The Zoom meeting was limited to 450 or something, but many more people wanted to participate. And we selected some significant speakers as a sort of inspirational talk, we called it. We selected 7, mostly majority women, and much younger than my generation. Very, very inspiring. I was deeply moved by these talks. And in the afternoon, we had 7, I believe, 7 workshops, each one varying from like I don't know, 30, 40, 50 people with the different topics. And I have seen some of them because, I was hosting one of the workshops. I couldn't attend the other meetings, but later I looked at the video, and quite good. I myself hosted a workshop on a population issue. Japanese are now, our population is going down now, as you know. But for many people who believe in economic growth, this is a huge problem. So, and also one issue is that community is losing population. But now we are witnessing many small, once almost abandoned communities are seeing young generations coming in, and the children, population of children are growing quite rapidly. So this was a new phenomenon that was not anticipated or expected by anyone, including all kinds of experts. So there's a very interesting trend here, and the young generation are getting more and more courageous, and they are willing to move into rural areas, quite remote areas, to recreate communities. And one big difference between my generation and their generation is that they are somehow very intelligent and very kind enough to become very friendly with the people who are already there. So that used to be a big problem, but now somehow we have been witnessing lots of great examples. Okay, time is over, right?
Pretty much, but you'll
okay.
get a chance to say more.
Lastly,
Yeah.
This month's activities have been organized mainly by 5 organizations. I'm the leader of Sloth Club, slow living, promoting cultural changes in cultural values, and Gen Japan Global Eco Village Network, also including many communities all over Japan, and Transition Town Japan. Now more than 60 communities are involved. And Greens Japan, this is very also growing rapidly. It's a very effective internet media. And also, yes, workers co-op. This is one thing that I'm very, very excited about. The new law has been passed by unanimous decision in the national parliament in Japan last December. So it's now a kind of a legal movement. And now they've got about 10,000 members all over Japan. they are creating workers' corps and communities throughout Japan. Very, very active. And then their importance was very much pronounced because of the COVID-19 crisis. Okay, so if I have more time, I will share a little more later.
You will, please do. And it's so exciting that the fact that you had 5 big organizations coming together, very much like the situation in Mexico. Keibo, can you please hand on over to somebody else?
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in here. Thank you, Keibo. So inspiring to hear from you, as always. Trudy is still on the line, and her phone's about to run out of battery, so she'd just like to share about the World Localization Day project that she organized in North Queensland.
Hi everyone, I'm Trudy. I'm actually from the Global Eco-Village Network, so it's really great to hear, Keibo, about Gen Japan joining your alliance and having these events. It's so wonderful. And yeah, in the Gen network globally, I think many communities have actually organized local feasts, food feasts, which has been wonderful to hear about. And I'll just really share about one in particular that I've been part of. So I'm in Far North Queensland in Australia, and just had the honor and privilege to be part of a week-long session in a community called Jamban, which is a Aboriginal community. And we had the opportunity to facilitate like an eco-village process with the community for a week. And really the workshop was really focused on localization, you know, like looking at the local heritage and their indigenous knowledge and their systems and what's actually going on for the community. But what was really beautiful was that we did a little visit to the school, the local school, and the elders came out to the school and worked with the children. They have a little bush tucker garden where they have the local plants and trees, and the elders were able to walk around the garden and share with the children about each of the plants and its medicinal properties, what it was used for, and the children were just absorbing, you know, the knowledge from the elders, you know. And I think that is such a great opportunity, and also linked to what you're saying, Keibo. You know, the children are so hungry for this, and they were just wanting to know. They were touching and eating and tasting, and the elders just also so hungry to share what they have with the younger generation, you know. And so just being able to do that in a physical space was really celebrating, you know, the local culture, the local heritage. And then, yeah, on the last day of our event, that week-long event, we had just a local feast, and we all sat around the table and talked about localization and where's our food coming from. And it was just a wonderful opportunity, you know, just to be on country and to be with each other and to have those like strong relationships, and yeah, really being in place where we were. So yeah, a really wonderful opportunity. I'm on my way back to Brisbane, so my phone is going to die. Thank you, Henry, for bringing me in, and I look forward to more collaborations with Helena and Henry and the Local Futures and all of you.
Thanks so much, Trudy.
Thank you.
And thanks
Thank
for
you,
the
Trudy.
panel as well. Such an amazing contribution.
Yeah.
Safe driving.
And for those of you who don't know, Trudy is originally from Sri Lanka, but living in Australia now, and she's doing wonderful work bridging these new initiatives to build eco-villages and linking them to traditional villages. This is, I think, one of the most important things that can happen to help traditional communities to gain self-respect again, by realizing that, yes, in this modern world, there are people who are longing to go back to community and to the land. Thank you, Trudy.
Thanks, Helena. See you. Bye.
So Keibo didn't get to hand over, so I'll just do it, and then we'll move forward with that. Arnold, will you please go next, and then you hand over to somebody else afterwards? Arnold, do you want to go next?
Did you call me, Anja?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, sure. Okay, so warm greetings again of solidarity to everyone. I'm Arnold Padilla, coordinator of the Food Sovereignty Program of Pan-Asia Pacific. Pan-AP is a regional network of more than 100 civil society groups and movements of rural peoples, mainly in Asia. Our secretariat is based in Penang, Malaysia, but I myself is based in Manila. And we work on the elimination of harm upon humans and the environment of pesticide use. And we work on the promotion of food sovereignty and agroecology. I've been an activist, writing, researching, campaigning for the past 24 years, including my work with PAN-AP in the past 8 years. Specifically, I coordinate PAN-AP's campaign on land and resource grabbing in Asia and related human rights violations that accompany many of these land and resource grabs. For our World Localization Day event, PAN-AP co-organized with the Asian Peasant Coalition, or the APC. Last June 11, we had a special episode entitled Food Systems, Localize, Transform, Reverse Liberalization because we have this online talk show called Peasants Rise Up, being mainly organized by the Asian Peasant Coalition. And in that episode, we had guests representing progressive people's research institutions and peasant groups from India, the Philippines, Indonesia, and Pakistan, where we discuss how past and present liberalization policies have destroyed domestic food and agriculture in Asia, and how these policies undermine food security and wipe out livelihoods. Because you have to understand, for us, especially for the poor countries in Asia, when we have to grasp the issue of localization in the context of our history, of colonialism and the continuing domination until today, of rich and powerful countries in many of our societies and communities. So for PAN-AP during that episode, we highlighted how localization as a counter to liberalization must be understood in the context of the historical restructuring. We call it historical restructuring or reorientation of domestic agriculture and food production in Asia that dates back to the era of colonialism and that continues and deepens until today in the era of what we call neoliberalism. Because this restructuring of what food to produce, how to produce food, and for whom food is produced has been characterized by mass peasants and other small food producers who were dispossessed of ownership and control over their means of production, before by the colonial powers and today by the transnational corporations, but always in connivance with the local elite, the landlords, the big traders, the big businesses. So from colonialism to neoliberalism, food production in Asia has been systematically reoriented away from meeting the domestic food security and overall development needs of our people, and toward the requirements of the powerful and rich countries through international trade. So in that episode, we outlined policy recommendations that will reverse liberalization, advance food sovereignty, and pave the way for that truly radical transformation of food systems, including localization. And actually, many of the proposals are already the content of current grassroots campaigns in Asia, including on agrarian reform and rural development, for the peasant right to land, and for the human rights to food. And underlying many of these proposals is the people's assertion of their food sovereignty and democratic rights to be free from foreign domination and control, including in determining our own policies and programs for food and agriculture. I'll stop there, Anja.
Thank you. Can you hand over to someone, please? And we're
Yeah.
going to get to strategies afterwards. Keep some of them up your sleeve.
Yeah, I think I'll call Michelle.
Thank you very much. I was just looking for the correct button. Hello, everyone, and I'm really delighted to have been invited to join with you today. My name is Michelle Maloney. I live here in Brisbane, and because we're in a colonial nation, I always like to acknowledge that I'm on the traditional lands of the Aboriginal peoples called the Yagara and Turrbal people. So the ancient estates that Aboriginal First Nations peoples had continued to be looked after by people today. And I'm a descendant of the Irish and British people who came to this place. And I love my continent. My background, I'm a lawyer by trade. I was an environmental lawyer, but 10 years ago, myself and some friends started to build the Australian Earth Laws Alliance, or AELA. AELA has a mission which sounds simple, but is all about the complexity of systems change. Our interest is in shifting the governance systems of industrialized societies from human-centered, from growth-centered, to being earth-centered and life-centered again. So inside AELA, we look at structural reform issues around law, economics, education, and a whole range of community capacity building. We are deeply ingrained in working with civil society. And I guess our localization work inside AELA, excuse me, began when we very first started working with people on permaculture and arts and legal projects, law reform projects. But one of the reasons that Helena and I connected, and Helena has been so kind as to bring me into the localization network, is 4.5, 5 years ago, myself and a couple of others co-founded the New Economy Network Australia. So that's NENA. We like our short words in Australia. So AELA is my main organization, and NENA, we helped to auspice NENA, and it's all about creating a continent-wide network of people already working in alternative economy approaches. And by alternative, I mean everything that's about cooperative food, cooperative energy, community-based solutions. We've got many sectors in the work we do inside NENA, arts and culture. We look at cities, the commons, cooperatives, democracy and governance, ecological economics and donut economics, and lots of other topics like just transitions, law reform and legal services, narratives and storytelling, challenging extractivism. So NENA is a really fun, positive space. We have thousands and thousands of people connected now. We're an unfunded organization, so we all work as volunteers, and it has a really beautiful vibe. People work together really well. We just had like a whole range of different special weeks. We've had NENA Housing Week, where we bring 30 or 40 different organizations around Australia together to talk about solutions. Localization is one of the 5 key pillars of the work of NENA. When Helena and Anja got in touch suggesting we host a localization event, I was very excited. And on the 14th of June, myself, Helena, and 2 amazing Indigenous elder women, Mary Graham and Anne Polina, we had a 2-hour discussion about what localization and place-based life looks like, both from an Indigenous and non-Indigenous perspective. And we had a couple of 100 people on that webinar. It's recorded if anyone is interested. And in terms of the other work that we do, I'm also a director on a board with Indigenous friends and colleagues, 2 organizations, one Future Dreaming, and one is called Regenerative Songlines, which is a whole nother story and growing with a huge amount of interest in Australia. So that's it from me. I look forward to talking about strategies and ideas for the future. But I guess my background is love of the earth and love of the people who care for each other and the earth. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And that was a wonderful webinar. I was so honored to meet Mary Graham and Anne, but particularly Mary. So do you want to nominate someone, Michelle?
Everyone's forgetting to nominate. Can I choose Chris?
You can. My name's Chris Wood. I live in Vermont in the United States. I don't know if I'm the only one from this continent. Boy, that would be interesting for me, being in the sort of the epicenter of the the dominant paradigm, or at least as I feel the United States is. I work and have worked with an organization called BALE, Building a Local Economy. And we are very consciously hyper-local. So we're a watershed-focused organization. We've been around for 10 years, and we've been doing localization for all that time. We started entirely around food and food systems. I should say the White River watershed is actually just a relative small tributary of a bigger river, which is the Connecticut River in the eastern US. So we're 14 towns and only 24,000 people in all of those towns. So our focus is really on sort of a grassroots, knowing everybody, well, not everybody, but knowing as many people in our towns and working with the towns. We are agricultural. So our start was around food and food systems, and that has been the centerpiece of our work going forward. And, and I can say over the 10 years, it's actually pretty dramatic how much food consciousness as a localization piece is alive and well here. And of course, we have learned over time of the interconnection to all the other issues, leading with food and food systems, and identifying, how that is linked to food, to beyond food security, to all the other issues. So we do lots of hands-on practical things in the community. We have something called Resilience University, which just teaches hands-on work. For we have a storefront that's sort of been heavily used before COVID. It's actually just becoming alive again because we have just stepped out from under sort of the severe level of COVID restrictions that we've all been under here in the US for 15, 16 months. So we're getting back into our time exchange. So we have a thing called time exchange where we eliminate US dollars, swap your time, share your time instead of your dollars. We actually are building a community solar project, community owned, with I think 23 families and one general store owning that power. We even have a little small investment club where people pool their money and invest in like a startup farm or the local new coffee shop that wants to get, going. So a variety of sort of very hands-on things. And then, of course, we try very hard to bring up the deeper dive, the systems view of why we're doing this. So we do have conversations. I don't know, Helen, if you remember, 3 years ago, you were here in our town at a conference in October 2017, along with a number of many other great speakers. And it was called Localize It, What Resilience Looks Like, is what we named it. And that obviously that was let's take the big picture and see and get people engaged in really thinking about the intentions behind localization. And I'll stop there because I do want to get into how we push this forward. And
Yeah. Just wanted to say I do remember very well, and I was particularly interested in that investment club you started. And I think, yes, maybe later you can tell people a bit more about that, because it is remarkable how much you can achieve if you just turn the I to a we and a few people come together to try to make change.
I'll call on Debra.
Thanks, Chris. Sorry to disappoint you. I'm also an American. My name is Debra Efroymson. I've actually been in Dhaka, Bangladesh. I've been in Asia for about 26 years. I'm the author of Beyond Apologies, Defining and Achieving an Economics of Wellbeing. And I actually have attended a MENA conference. So I was happy to see the connection with Michelle. Tell you a little bit about the organizations I'm involved with. One of them is Work for a Better Bangladesh. It's an advocacy organization. We work mostly on transport, open public spaces, and we just organized our first farmers market 2 days ago and 3 days ago. And yeah, it's going to be weekly, and we've actually been asked by the Food and Agriculture Organization to start organizing them all over Dhaka, which is a city of about 16, well, somewhere between 12 and 16 million people. So we're trying to, for better deal for the farmers and connecting farmers to the consumers, helping consumers get fresh food that's grown without chemicals. So this is something very exciting. We're just starting here. We've done a lot of work on supporting the ability of people to get around without using motorized transport, having outdoor places where people can come together and meet others in their community. WBB is actually part of the Health Bridge Livable Cities Network, and I also work for Health Bridge, which is the Canadian NGO. I started the Livable Cities program in 2006. We've now worked in several countries in Africa and Asia. Again, advocacy around issues like transport, open public space, markets, making it easier and safer for people to walk and cycle instead of all the investment. The idea that development means roads and transport means cars. We're trying to challenge that throughout the world. And I work with Institute of Wellbeing, where I spend most of my time, which is I set up to counter myths about economics, a lot of the issues that have come up, working mostly with the university students to help them keep their idealism and find a practical expression for it. And because I work a lot with the Asian University for Women, which is international, I get interns from all over Asia, a lot from Afghanistan, former Pakistan, Bhutan, Nepal, various countries. So it's a great way to influence university students as they're just getting their ideas together, helping them be more idealistic about these issues. And along with Shail, I am part of the core group of the Car-Free Cities Alliance, which like a phoenix has risen from the ashes of the World Car-Free Network. So again, an international movement. We're in 10 cities now, Africa, Asia, and Brazil, supporting local organizations to try to reduce the use of cars in the city, reduce the space for cars, and return our streets and our public spaces to people. So here in Bangladesh, to say very quickly, we organized 2 talk shows, one in Bengali, one in English. The one in English was with students from Asian University for Women who are doing internships with me, talking about celebrating the local. I was very happy 2 indigenous students were there. And I wrote 1 newspaper article, which was published in a major English daily. And I'm looking forward to talking more about how we can integrate more on urban planning, transport, and advocacy, especially for those like me who are urban-based. And I will call on my colleague, Shail.
Thank you, Debra. Yeah, first of all, I owe an apology to Henry that I forgot I met him. And I met Henry, Alex, and you were in Bangalore. So
no worries, I forgot where it was that we met. I just recognized
yeah.
you. Good to see you again.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I'm Shail. I'm from Nepal. And I'm really excited. I woke up 2 hours earlier to my alarms today, you know. So I'm very happy to be here. This gives a sense of responsibility as well, you know, into how we are into this forefront of getting this discourse ahead, and that is really empowering for me as well. So I work in Digo Bikas Institute, which is sustainable development in Nepali terms, and we are a research-based advocacy group that is committed to ecological equity and social justice across generations. So that's how we put our goal in general. But we broadly engage into cross-disciplinary approach on defining development itself. And we believe that's where we should begin, and that's how we are involved. This World Localization Day, we did 2 events. One was with Debra and Kathryn Cities Alliance on defining, embodying the local economy spirit, a case for car-free cities. That basically is based on the fact that all the cities, and in some cases the urban settlements of the world, are pretty much based on the trade, you know, or economy to be the core of the physical manifestation that the present time has shown. So, and that really makes a very important case for localization in Nepal, because Nepal has a lot of cities that were built, a lot of settlements, urban settlements built before cars were invented. So I'll just show 2 pictures if that's okay, or it's not.
Yes, Henry, can you screen share, Shail?
Okay, yeah, thank you.
No worries.
Sorry. Yeah. So these are the centers of the city, you know, and you can see that the focus of a settlement is not business, or it's not economy, it's the convergence, social convergence, where art is manifested, you know. So the central city, which is this is the center of this is a center in a city called Bhaktapur. And it shows that the community had art and space to converse and, you know, to relax, to be the center of life, you know. That's what needs to be in the center. And this is really, if you see the newer form, the new recent development and the city center, it's a junction of, it's a big intersection of cars, and that's what the central government of Nepal sees as development. They see this as a heritage, and we really work on the fact to convince that this is not just a heritage, it has futuristic relevance. The city is 15 minutes walking distance and takes in like 85,000 people. So the idea that this can be our future, this can be the local, this can be our own definition of what a city can be, you know, which is hijacked at the moment. So and every intersection has places like this, you know, place where people can converge, you know, meet. So every intersection inside that city has this public places, and every house at least has one courtyard that is connected to it, you know, more than one. So this is something that really, you know, for me, it is about, you know, localizing the future itself, you know, the local future that you have. It really connects to me. And so this was one discussion that we are trying to work through to, you know, redefine what development is in Nepal. And another discussion that we had was called localization as an existential option, or the existential need, you know, that that at present political context and the threat of climate and everything, that localization is something that is related to our existence, and that we should take this not as some optional or one angle, but that this has to be core to our political debate. So we are trying to connect this to recent federalism that Nepal has gone through. And so it was really an important discussion for us to, create a strong ground base for a political transformation, which we did with representatives of municipal association and engineers and urban planners, economists from municipalities, to have this discourse, and I think World Localization Day is a wonderful idea. It really gave us like ideas that we have been thinking for years, and we got a good cause to converse for it. So yes, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I did forget. I was really much careful. Kathryn, did I pronounce your name right? Manga.
Yes. Thank you. Hi everyone. My name is Kathryn Manga. I am from Kilusang Magubukid ng Pilipinas, or the Peasant Movement of the Philippines. KMP works with advocates for landless farmers and for the rights of farmers in the Philippines. We have 65 regional chapters right now, and we work with about 1.3 million local farmers, landless farmers in the different regions of the country. We actually participated in 3 localization activities. One was already mentioned by Arnold, and I'm very happy that I'm speaking after Arnold, because he has already given you our narrative. What he has shared with you is actually our country's narrative. It's our story, colonialization and everything. So in the Philippines, there are almost not less than 9 out of 10 farmers do not own the land they till. And so land is a very, very big factor for our work and for our campaign. The localization activity that we did was, the first one was the Bagsakan. Bagsakan is our, it's a colloquial term for drop-off point or a marketplace where produce are gathered and where other small vendors would buy local produce to be sold to other places and other markets as well. We came up with Bagsakan in the past years. We called it the pop-up Bagsakan. So in Bagsakan, our farmers would bring their produce, different products, to rallies, to mobilizations, to dialogues. So it's an opportunity for them to still earn while they are doing their political work. But during the COVID lockdown, they were not able to transport their produce to the market. And there was also the need for the consumers from the cities when the lockdown was still implemented, that consumers cannot go to the market, go out to buy their needs. And so what we did was we connected the two groups. We set up an online Bagsakan. We set up an online farmers market where we gathered orders from our friends, from our networks, and then immediately our page started gaining reach, and so there were lots of customers already. So that was for our part, for KMP's part, that was what we did. For the 1 year that we have been doing online Bagsakan, we were actually amazed of the results. One particular is that our farmers, the profit of our farmers would be around 300%. Unlike if they sell their local produce to the traders who would buy their products at a very, very cheap price. For us, Bagsakan is also an opportunity to to make people understand the local situation and the problems of the farmers. So there is a relationship created between the farmers and the consumers. I can add more and share more about this maybe later. But for the other activity that we have done, we also participated in the Rice for Rice online food festival. So the idea of the Rice for Rice actually came from I was sharing with our friends in the Agroecology Exchange. Agroecology Exchange is our network of food buffs, agricultural rights advocates, land rights advocates, and others in the Philippines. So I was sharing with them my experience when I was a child. My grandmother, after harvesting rice, would cook all kinds of cakes, rice cakes, and the different food coming from our harvest. And she would offer it to our ancestors, particularly to thank them of the knowledge that they have given her in planting the variety, the seeds, and also of giving her the knowledge of how to cook this. So for us, it's pretty much reclaiming our culture. So in Rice for Rice, what we did was we gathered farmers from different parts of the country, from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. We asked them to cook the particular rice recipe that is usually cooked in their place. But the thing is, it was a celebration, but at the same time, it was also a platform where they can share with one another the different challenges that they had during the planting season and the harvest season. So in particular, there was very much focus in the discussion on the effects of the rice liberalization law that is happening in the Philippines, where with that law, more and more imported rice products are in the market right now, and which is actually killing our local varieties, our local farmers. And because they are already deep in debt right now, most of our farmers have already sold off the little parcel of land that they have for planting rice. So we have also gathered different recommendations from their policy recommendations, and we're very happy to share them with you after this activity, and we can also share our website with you so that you will have more information about the activities that we have done. Thank you very much.
Thais, the word is yours.
Okay. So I am, let
Thais
me
is,
ask.
I think I'm the last one.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'm from Brazil, so my name is Thais. Nice to meet some of you. Some of you already know. Here it's at night, and I'm very honored to be part of this group. Henry, if I could share the screen to put a little bit of faces in the people that helped me. Here in Brazil, I co-founded an organization called EcoUniversity, EcoUniversidade. We are, for now, an online university, but we do want to be face-to-face with our community as well. But we organize courses, experiences around ecology, and regeneration, and sustainability. And we hosted a 4-day event called Our Future is Local, with 40 panelists and 10 panels on different areas of localization. So I'm just going to share with you, and I think it's a little bit easier. So all recordings are on YouTube, but sorry, let me find it here. I think I closed it somehow. There it is. So our event had more than 40 people, 10 panels, and 2 workshops. We had an opening panel talking what is localization, because localization movements in Brazil, it does exist and it's everywhere, but people didn't know how to put a name on it. So the word localization wasn't something that was very much understood by the wide public. So we had a table of opening of the event talking about what is localization, what is the movement worldwide, so we could understand a little bit about it. Then we talk about local economies. We talked about local fashion and cloth production. Then we talk about local architecture and urbanism, local education, local art. And then we had a special day only for food. And it was Valentine's Day here in Brazil. The 12th of June is Valentine's Day in Brazil. And we said it was a day of falling in love with the planet and food, what we eat. And then we talked about food production, consuming of food, and then closing the cycle of food. So composting, recycling, and all those types of things. And in the end, we had a closing ceremony with a show, like a musical show, with Dessa Ferreira and Marcio. And Dessa is a Afro-Indigenous woman that talk about indigenous knowledge and traditional music from Africa and from Brazilian indigenous cultures. And then we had 2 workshops, one with Regina Celli, that she's from the favela in Rio de Janeiro, and she talks about using all the parts of vegetables and everything about, like, if you're gonna cook a broccoli, you use all parts of it and you don't throw away. So she's talking about food production, and she's talking about waste as well, and how can you cook with even the like peel, when you peel the outside of the banana skin, you can use everything within your food. And then we had another workshop with Bruna, which she's an urban collector, and she talks about non-conventional plants that you can eat, because in Brazil we do consume lots of vegetables that come from Europe, which are not local. So she's talking about actually local plants that you can just find in Brazil and eat. They're not very conventional for everyone, but they are, you can eat it, right? It's edible. And then we had, these are the pictures of our panelists. So we had over 40 of them from every part of Brazil, south to north, and representing their projects. So each one of them has a local project that they talked about. And the organizers of the event was myself, my partner at EcoUni, and Larissa, which is the co-founder of Núcleo Muda. And we also had 2 artists that were invited to create visual art after each panel. So after each panel, we had this artist draw phrases and pictures and expressions of what were shared. So this is us in Brazil. I'm not going to speak for long because I know we want to get in other topics. So thank you.
Thank you. And it was wonderful to see those photos, actually. It's, you know, yeah, very, very good. Thank you. So now we wanted to move ahead into this discussion of how we think we can move this whole movement forward. What do we think we can do? And we're thinking it's quite good if any one of you wants to jump in right now, and then we can, yeah, just speak up. Anyone want to go first?
Well,
Keibo.
Thais just mentioned about the problem that people are not familiar with the term localization, and Japan, especially because it's a totally foreign word. We could translate it, but then it becomes sort of something else, you see. So what we mean by localization is also relocalization, reimagining and rediscovering what has been always there. So so that's one of the challenges, isn't it? This term localization, how we promote it. And I agree that we need a one term so that people from all over the world, the groups from all over the world can be united.
I think that one of the prerequisites really to building a strong movement is that people be clear that the path that's taking us away from community, away from nature, and away from ourselves, from our needs and our inner life, is a globalizing path. And that's where I think the localizing opposite direction, literally opposite direction, back to earth, back to community, and back to wholeness. It's about back to nature, back to the natural, the more natural way of doing things. It's back to the empowerment that also has to do, even in medicine, with trusting our own bodies more and trusting nature's ability to heal. It's not about abandoning all forms of medicine, but in terms of the system we've been pulled into, we've come to totally deny our own abilities to sense our bodies and to use our senses at all. So I think, yeah, I don't know, I've struggled for years. As you know, I've been promoting it for 45 years almost. And it was a better term than, ancient futures was, how can we learn from ancient human cultures? It's not just about learning from nature, but it's about learning from cultures that lived in and with nature. What are the basic structures that we must take forward? And then, of course, there's the discussion of what can we do in the forms of technology, in terms of learning, from across the world and so on, so that the future won't be relocalization in the sense that it won't be exactly what was there before. And I don't particularly understand or know or really understand why many Americans and English people tend to use relocalization. And part of my lack of understanding is that they are very resistant to the idea of going back. And since the localizing is going to be it's never going to be exactly the same, I figure, why make that long, ugly word even longer? So I think really, I would definitely vote for localization instead of relocalization. But there may be a better umbrella term. But I have struggled and I haven't found one. Does anyone here
I
have
agree.
an idea?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I don't use the word relocalization, but we should be aware the fact that this is quite a big challenge.
Yes,
because modernization, westernization has been always anti-past, anti-culture, anti-community,
absolutely.
anti-nature.
So Patricia, I think Patricia wanted to say something.
Yeah.
Well, yes. About this, what is saying Keibo and Tai about the term of localization. In fact, in Mexico, into the team, we were talking about if we are going to talk about the Spanish word. The translation is localización, Día Mundial, the World Day of Localization is Día Mundial de la Localización, or if we have to change localization because we don't use in Spanish, if we want that everybody understand in Spanish what is the meaning of localization, we have to use local. In fact, we have a hashtag, we create into the team a hashtag, I am local, I am local. So it was very easy into the videos and posters and these different events that we have in Mexico during this period, that many people can understand directly, okay, yes, I understand, I am local, no? So we don't use localización or localization, no?
Over the course of the year, we don't, I would say localization is not used that much in terms of my terminology or even what I hear around me. You know, and why when we named that conference, we said localize it. You know, because it was catchier and friendlier. But you know, even the last workshop used localism as the term. You know, and I always often use localize or localizing just because it's an active term. Localization is, you know, sort of a long noun that doesn't have, you know, a forward thinking to it. So I don't use it that much, although I obviously think that this is all part of a localization movement. It's just that I don't leverage that word that much.
So can I just say, oh, sorry, over to you. I just want to say one thing. So we can keep on, and I think it's very, very important, because it is a real obstacle if we don't have a language that we share. So I'll hand over to you. Was it you, Debra? But also, if there are other things you want to talk about here, as about how can we move a movement forward, please also bring that in, because language is one thing, and I don't think we're going to settle it here today. But
yes, that's what I wanted to bring. This was something that happened in Brazil, but I think it was very positive because we didn't have one umbrella term to get people united. And one of the most beautiful things that I saw happening is that localization was already happening in Brazil everywhere. So we had, it was hard to choose. That's why it was 40 people there, because there were so many projects and people all around the country doing localization. And it was hard because it was everywhere. It was sprouting everywhere. It was just not visible. It was invisible. People were not looking at it. And then when we came together as a community and as a big event, it just shined the light everywhere. And people were like, oh, okay, so I part of this movement. There's other people around the country doing the same thing as I am and valuing the same things. And it just gave us strength. So I think bringing localization to Brazil and uniting all these local projects was something really important to act within community. And here in Brazil, we have this syndrome that we think we are not enough, that we have to be like Europe or the United States because they are developed countries and we are not. And I think this movement gave us strength of how can we show the global world that there's so much value in what's happening here right now. And people that did clothes within the forest with rubber from the forest and showing that this flip-flop is so much more beautiful than fossil fuel flip-flop that is all around the world. So it was about beauty and community and showing the world that culture that was actually very close to us is just as important as other countries, that we don't have to undermine ourselves, that we are a big movement and we just need to find each other. So I think it was very positive. I don't know about the word itself, but it was very positive because we were in community and we found the strength of seeing that there are other people within the movement. So I think it was something very positive, and localization, in a sense, gave us this thread to weave each other in strength to kind of resist as well.
Well, it's wonderful to hear that, Thais. And I think there can also be a bit of a problem that localization can be misunderstood to be simply acting local. And of course, we're trying to encourage this systemic shift where localizing is about rebuilding that community fabric, the human scale interdependence that in turn is relating to place-based, maybe bioregional, regional. Local is not an absolute term. It's come about in distinction to this other path pulling us in the opposite direction. So it really is a response to the man-made system pulling us away. And it does ultimately mirror indigenous culture. We're coming back to something more indigenous, of place.
Arnold has his hand up.
Who?
Arnold.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Henry. So for localization, the key is for it to be a grassroots movement, no? Right? So and therefore content is very important. No? And I've shared earlier the Asian perspective, our history, and Kathryn gave an example in the Philippines where farmers, 9 out of 10 of farmers are actually landless. No? So given this context, I think if you want localization to move forward, it has to be embraced by the grassroots, and it has to respond not to their immediate concerns. No, in Asia, in many countries in Asia, that is land. And so I actually wrote an article recently outlining what we think should localization movement in the region could look like. And if you'll allow me to read portions of that article. So a localization movement must be more than anything else, a movement for genuine agrarian reform, no? And rural development and national democracy and sovereignty built on people's rights. Now, concretely, this means advocating for localization that does not simply involve connecting the small farmers or food producers directly to the market, no, at the local or community level, such as through farmers markets or community-supported agriculture. Of course, all these things are important and concrete steps, not towards localization. But beyond these community efforts, localization must advocate for structural changes, no, in the social and production relations between farmers, traders, and landlords. And it should advocate for the necessary policy reforms and programs, no, at the national level. No? So it should advocate for the necessary policy reforms and programs at the national level to make these changes possible. Because if you imagine, no, how could community-led initiatives, no, like we have farmers markets or community-supported agriculture, how could these initiatives prosper, no, amid a predominant system wherein domestic food and agriculture, like in many countries in Asia, is firmly tied to the global market and trade that is monopolized by transnational corporations? Now, how can local farm production be advanced and strengthened to meet community needs, now when the prevailing policy environment is neoliberal restructuring of agricultural production, no, at the expense of food security and farmers' livelihoods? How can the great majority of farmers of Asia even participate in community partnerships or food localization movements when they are landless, no, when they are dispossessed of lands to till and are deprived of the capacity to produce food? So for us, I think it's very important, no, for localization, its content, no, should be, on the one hand, we encourage farmers markets, community-supported agriculture, but building the overall policy environment that would support these kinds of initiatives from the communities.
Definitely.
I just want to say that this is for us of vital importance, and that we struggle often to bring that perspective into some of the localization initiatives, particularly in the West. But for us, this has always been central, that we want to encourage these community initiatives to build the strength and the commitment to talking about the policy changes. But it is a struggle. There is a tendency for people often to just want to rest. Once they've understood how important localization is for them, they are often resistant to that bigger picture. But I also want to say, Arnold, that one of the problems we've had is that on the left, many people around the world, including in the Philippines, for a long, long time didn't take localization seriously because they were so focused on the reality of this expanding global system and the injustice of it, and wanting to change that whole system. And the fact that we saw a movement, a wedge, a way to start shifting things, often working with more privileged people, often working with more of a middle class sector, to start demonstrating that the human scale, smaller, is necessary to encourage biodiversity and so on the land. So we've had this huge resistance from the left, but just in the last couple of years, that's changing. So we absolutely agree, and I hope you'll help, to make it clear to those who are only focused on the policy change and the bigger system, to take the grassroots initiatives seriously and not to reject them, because sometimes the people who initiate them are more privileged. So sorry for dominating.
Anja has her hand raised, and Michelle.
Yeah, and I think, Michelle, you go first, and then afterwards, I just want to share a little bit about some of the things that came out of the other call we had, about some of the things that they suggested that we should be doing. Michelle, the word is yours.
I will have to jump off in about 5 minutes. We've got some really big events on. But what I wanted to ask, as someone who's been involved in localization oriented work for decades, but I'm only new to this kind of network, your network, I'd like to know what's already going on in the global connectivity between groups in terms of shared language, shared campaigns, shared ideas, because I think, and I apologize for not knowing, if we know what some of the folks who've been working together around the world are already doing, then maybe that gives us a basis for analysing what we can continue to do or do differently in the future. I think the opportunity to hear what everyone's up to hear what the other groups you've been talking to, there's so many amazing projects going on, but what I'm interested in is what's the glue that has been holding folks together, or if this is a new process to find stronger ways to build the connectivity, then I think that's got a process all of its own. And the first issue is, what are we talking about when we talk about localization, and how do we develop some shared ideas that we then translate into our own cultures and languages and places appropriately? So that's really my question, is a process question. So.
Well, I think just very quickly, as far as we know, we are virtually the only organization trying to promote localization as this process, which we define in the way that you have heard, globally. And our methods have been, to organize regional conferences, bringing together global voices. We set up something called the IAL. So please do look at our website, and to our knowledge, there aren't others that are actually focused on localization globally. But I hope you'll join this movement. It's a very tricky task because we're committed to supporting the grassroots, and it's an enormous task. But
yeah, I've been involved in a lot of global networks, and there are ways that you can bring diverse, connected groups into a place where they're at least singing from the same page, and then breaking off into their own work. But yeah.
So I think that is a really good point, Michelle, and I think that's perhaps something we should meet again about and see if because that would be kind of more than a session. I think that would be something we really have to spend some time to hash out. And we did try, as Helena said, with the IAL, International Alliance for Localization, but it, we haven't succeeded. But that doesn't mean we can't. We hope with this World Localization Day, the way we've done it this time, can help us move ahead and kickstart a platform for a global movement. No? I just wanted to say that we had a similar call earlier with other representatives from the global network here, and some of the things that came out of that, as in terms of how do we move it forward, the movement was that there was a suggestion that we need, to think of setting up kind of hubs for localization, where you very much, as you said, Thais, that things are already happening, but people haven't identified themselves as being part of a movement. And once they do that, they feel both stronger, bolder, and able to do so much more. And another proposal was that, yes, so to set up these hubs, we need some sort of tools that could be shared also for the processes. No, how do you set up a hub? How do you get going on different, localization initiatives, which can also and should also, I think, involve, like what you were saying, Arnold, well, not exactly in those words, but looking, at the resisting the corporate and the neo-colonial and neoliberal economy, at the same time. That should be part of our job. And then there was also a proposal for, or not a proposal as such, but a suggestion that we need kind of, someone named it as a university, but I don't think that's exactly what they meant, but kind of somewhere where we as can come together with different voices and different experiences, and people could, I guess a bit like you are doing, Thais, with the university in Brazil, but something international, so we could internationally offer something to people as in a way of kind of rethinking, re-educating and reimagining a different future where we could all feed in with different expertise, experiences and so forth. So those were the kind of proposals that came out from the last call.
And are there any others who would like to offer something while we still have a few minutes left?
Shail has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think, yes, also I want to start with the term itself. And I think the discourse that we did really was on how to contextualize localization for Nepal, the concept, and we didn't even focus on the economic localization, but in broader what that concept and the terms means to us. And at the end of the discussion, so one of the thought that came to us was, what would be the right Nepali term that defines not the entire localization concept, but the phase that we should be in. And something that came out in the discussion was something that could relate to like municipalization, to bring this economic assessment at municipal scale, because at least in Nepal right now, because this is a very young federal, economic, political system where we only had our first mayors in the municipal system only 4 years ago. And so there is already this big, struggle of power in between the central and the municipal. And we instead of focusing on the federal state or the central level, we wanted to build this discourse that could empower the municipalities and the local representatives, so that the municipal associations come together to talk about what the national policy could be, and that could really bring in about the local spirit or the concept of future at a local scale. And I think, there's so many ways to do that, but one way would be on defining this, dividing creating different phases on which localization can happen or is happening, also on, like political and, what are the different phases through which we go through. So that helps us map out, self-analyze, and then we can do this we can do some collective research with simple, questions, a simple concept throughout the year, maybe divide it into, few parts and do a collective assessment through the network. And I think something like that could be really helpful to learn from each other.
Could I ask you, when you say municipalities, are you talking about actual local government structures? Are you actually talking about the local government?
No, I'm talking about actual, yes.
So the elected local government. Yeah. It may be in Nepal, I don't know. What I'm finding is that they are more responsive to the grassroots. But we are finding that even those local governments are getting their marching orders from above.
Definitely.
And ultimately, that comes from this financial casino, which is insane. pressuring national governments, and it extends down to over-regulation at the local level, which is monstrously unjust and destructive. So I guess we have our faith still in the grassroots, in something, in building something that combines those who are concerned with social issues, those concerned with the environment, those concerned with the spiritual values, bringing them together and across the world, and strengthening each other through international dialogue to then, at the same time, pressure local government, but also pressure, as Arnold was saying, even higher up.
Patricia is next, and I'm not certain. Then there's Manga, Debra, and Thais.
I feel there's a certain, I feel it's fair enough that I speak a bit more than others in this, since we've been holding this for so long, but I apologize if I'm talking more than the rest of you. So who's coming?
Patricia.
Yes. Well, I would like to share a few ideas. Well, more because you know that Mexico has, we have a particular government. We are in a transition, yes. It's supposed that we are living neoliberal politics, and well, the idea of our government is to change to moral economy. That is the same that if we talk about solidarity economy. So this is the general project of our government with Andrés Manuel López Obrador. But, well, after 2 years, we are looking that the results is that, of course, we have projects that supports many of the rural areas with some of the projects of local economies, not at all, but also we have a very strong policy that continues to support neoliberal politics. So I don't know what is going to happen. So we have to talk more about this, but some of the ideas that what we are thinking that could be the next steps is to improvement of a national legal framework that support local economies. So we have to work a lot, very, very hard with that. Because on the other hand, we are looking and we are living in a country that the treaties, international treaties, market treaties are running very fast. So I think we think that we have to work on this. Also, another idea is it's very important to promote local consumption, mainly local markets, of course, mainly in urban areas, see? Yes, with resources and as well with local production from the use of local inputs without pesticides. And finally, another idea is, well, since Mexico is a country that has a very, very rich and diverse biocultural heritage, it must be recognized, supported, and exchanged, and of course defended, both national and international at national and international level, because it is a fact that its contribution of this important, mainly in indigenous rural area, is remarkable to the health of our planet and of our species. That's all. Thank you.
So I'll hand over, but I think you forgot to say, well, I don't know if you forgot to say, Patricia, but I think it's worth mentioning that out of the kind of coalition that came together to organize World Localization Day in Mexico, which you talked about at the beginning, we've now created a global to local platform that we plan to continue with, right?
Yes.
I think
yes,
that's
I
very important.
Yes, well, that I mentioned in my first intervention.
Oh.
When I talk of the different events at the end of that, I mentioned that we create that platform. So we will continue with that.
Yeah.
Debra had her hand up, has had her hand up the longest. So we go Debra, then Kathryn, then Thais.
Yeah, just quickly, I would just suggest if a small group get together within the next week or two to discuss the building of the local movement. I would say coronavirus has actually helped us because everyone's so used to having these discussions now online, and then have a series of partner meetings, webinars. People can ask what topics they're interested in. I'm sure there's a lot of resources already on your website, but you can hear from your partners what materials, resources do they need more to support them. Just being part of a global network is often really motivating. So the ones I'm involved in, we have meetings every 2 weeks or every week, get together, share concerns, and then people can learn from each other, which then once those connections happen, a lot of them continue more locally. So people within the same country or the same region can continue those conversations. And I saw Michelle had offered to help. I'd also be happy to help figure out how to get this going based on the experience I have with different international networks.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Kathryn, Manga.
Yes, hello. First of all, thank you everyone for inviting us in this platform. And just like what Debra said, just being invited and being able to share with you our local context and the stories from the ground, from the communities is enough for us to, it's like during these times, difficult times during the lockdown, it's like opening the windows and realizing that there are other people who are also looking for possible solutions to our dire situations, not just us Filipinos for our situation. So maybe just to share with you, our farmers fight for land is very much connected with the efforts that we are doing to to focus maybe on localizing our markets as well. We understand that it is not really the answer to everything that we have been looking for, because in the Philippines, without land, you cannot even plant anything or sell anything. And we have realized that in the past pandemic, because with the displaced farmers and communities that we had, all we could do was sell the farmers who could produce and sell the profit, the little profit that we have there, we would set aside for the relief operations for our displaced farmers. So it's only relief operations and relief, giving them relief food for a short period of time. That's what we can do. And so the struggle for land continues for us. But at the same time, we understand that there is this appreciation coming from the farmers who are still able to produce food, that when they are given the right amount for their products, then they would be more than willing to cultivate and to produce food for the community. And I think that is where where our the localization would want to start. And also we want to share that just recently we had a brief workshop training with our farmers, and we have made a bagsakan module. So about Bagsakan, a module for our online farmers market. So recently we also had a dialogue and a training with local Indonesian farmers coming from Yogyakarta. And they were very interested in also doing an online farmers market. And so we tried to make a module out of our efforts and we shared it with them. And we would love to share it with other organizations or our other farmers organizations in this community if you are interested. Thank you.
Definitely. Definitely, please share it. And if you like, you can send it to us and we'll make sure it gets to everybody. And so equally with other people, if you have resources that you want to be shared, send it to us. Thais? Thais, sorry, Thais.
Yes. No, it's great. I think for Brazil, for moving the movement into the future, I see lots of places for us to tell the stories, because I think the stories are invisible right now. And today they're within a bubble, we call it. So only people who are interested in sustainability and local consumption know. And as for us to grow the movement, I think we should pop these bubbles and take this real stories of real inspiration that it's possible to live a different life within people who are deeply urbanized or globalized or that live these other narratives. So I believe that showing that it's possible to live different ways that are connected to nature and to see that there are different visions of this world, such as indigenous visions here in Brazil, and tell the stories as much as we can everywhere. This is what could move us forward here in Brazil and pop these bubbles of people who are only today have access to an interest in sustainability and localism and these types of topics, and reach other places where people are so within deep this destructive narratives of growth and separation. So this, I think, first, telling stories and popping bubbles. Second, weaving communities of strength that we are doing here right now. And we did this with the event. So as much as we can, bring people who are in these places together so that they understand the movement. And I think something else is policies. So when we are in coalition and working together, we can pressure the governments for policy change. So we stop subsidizing big corporations and we start bringing money and interest into the places that people are struggling, but are the grassroots movements that need the most. And when we pop this bubble and we work with policies together in strengths of coalition, I think what we call consumers, but they're beings, like we're not consumers. I think we shouldn't be labeled like that, but people who are consuming, they understand that they can be part of the movement themselves, and they understand that they can be part of the story and not only be tagged as a consumer and live a meaningless life. So I think for the movement to grow, there needs lots of coalition and coming together, telling the stories and letting what is invisible today be more visible. And this will be possible, I believe, when we come together in places like this. So I would like to congratulate this year's event for being so local and global at the same time.
Thais, I'd love to ask you, and the rest of you, if you still have time, do you think that telling the invisible story of what's going on in the global economy with this corporate influence on our governments and on our worldviews, on education, do you think telling that, as it were, negative invisible story is counterproductive or not so useful, or do you think we should always try to include it? I'd love to hear from you, Thais, and from others.
I think it's not counterproductive. I think it's important, because most of us, I say in the world, don't know this. So let's, for example, we don't know that some big companies, they don't pay taxes, and this is absurd. And then when you get to know these types of things, you're like, oh my God, there is something deeply wrong. So I think both stories should be told, like the corporate invisible story and also the local stories that are doing things different and they see the world differently, and seeing the shocks between both and seeing how this story invisible makes this other stories smaller and these other things. So I think it's important to tell the truth and be transparent about everything. And this is what I think you call, Helena, big picture activism, that you see everything, you see the wholeness, and you see the bigger picture of the system. And you're not only focusing on symptoms, but actually what's behind everything. So this is what I think.
Debra?
I think we need to hire you, Thais. Yeah, and yes.
I worked for many years on tobacco control, and what you do there is you learn how to reduce the power of the tobacco companies to influence governments. And they created an international movement where we were able to get laws passed despite extreme resistance on the part of the powerful corporations. Now I'm working on urban planning and transport. The corporations are even bigger and more powerful, but we're doing the same thing. So in order for the local to thrive, you have to reduce the power of the corporations. And I always say, it doesn't matter how much money they have, the power is in the community if you can bring the community together. But you do have to understand how the corporations work, how they influence governments, know where that influence is happening and how to counter it. And I'm happy to share, I've got decades of experience doing that. It is possible, it's a huge amount of work, but it allows enormous changes. Just like a really quick example, we're fighting rickshaw bans in Dhaka, where the World Bank is pushing the government to ban the bicycle rickshaw, major source of transport, major source of employment, no emissions. And we were able to stop the bans. But you know, these are things that are super important. So I think not everyone wants to work on this, but for those who are interested, it's a very important part of encouraging localization is to reduce the power of international corporations.
I'm so glad you agree. Is there anyone
Patricia has her hand up?
Well, yes, I would like to say something what Thais says, because well, it's very, very interested. What did you mention? And I am completely agree with your opinion. But I think that when we do that, we need to work a lot with resilience, yes, in both levels, individuals, yes, and also community, in the community resilience. It's very, very important to work that, yes. If not, we will have, well, there are a lot of troubles also into the individuals or also in communities with emotional problems like depression. So you know that because well, the crisis that we have now, the ecological, energetic, all crises that we are now living. So it's very, very important. I am completely agree with you, Thai, that it's very important to show and the people know both sides. But at the same time, we have to work with this that we call resilience. Yes, these capacities that all of the human being has, the positive capacities that we have, the health capacities that we have, also in individuals and also in communities, and to work together, no, in order that we can face that problems.
I wonder if Chris or Keibo, you want to comment, and Arnold as well. I know we're running out of time, but it's let's just run over time.
Just one thing. I too totally agree with the Thais and Helena, especially in Japan, without profound deep programming from this, global system, and sort of modernization, westernization, because almost totally communities have been once destroyed. It's very hard, or it's sometimes impossible to reimagine, rediscover our cultural roots, cultural values, you know, and local knowledge, especially of things like agroforestry. Agroforestry is an ancient thing for us. You have heard of Japan's history, you know, Jomon period, which lasted 10,000 years. And now we know that the most of the Jomon era, we were practicing sort of our version of agroforestry, kind of farming. But now, most Japanese are very forgetful about this past, and sort of urban people have a very, very negative image about the farming. You know, they don't want to think about farming of any kind. But now lots of young people, you know, are moving towards farming life. So yes, we really need to understand how this global system works and how deeply programmed we have been. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say I totally agree with all of that as well. Just my 2 cents.
Chris, did you want to say something too?
Well, I think Thais framed it very well. My focus is really hyper local, and yet when we're sort of maybe getting back to structure, it's not, you know, it's not smooth and it's not perfect here, but the place where I work is at grassroots, hyper local, connected to the community. It is about relationship. It's relationship and community. But for example, the gathering that we did that Helena came to, there's an organization that's called the Vermont New Economy Coalition. So in other words, the Building a Local Economy, the organization that I work with, is connected to a statewide organization. And then the other organization, other organizations that co-sponsored that was the Northeast Resilience and Transition, which is a larger sort of connected, I mean, somebody was mentioning hubs. I mean, in some ways I see that as a hub. And then, of course, in the United States, we have the New Economy Coalition, which is a national organization that was also actually, the director was part of that same conference. And so there is, you know, there's what, you know, what I'm involved in is at the hyperlocal, and I'm very happy at the hyperlocal. But there are other connections. They're not all strong, you know, some of them are struggling, but there is this sort of framework building out from there, networked in that way. So it feels like there's something there. I mean, obviously there's so much work, you know, to be done to strengthen it. And, you know, in the United States, you know, we're up against, you know, the harshest of the, you know, the consumer capital. So it, you know, so it's hard. But there is something rolling, and I know Keibo mentioned the young people. There are indeed young people coming who are farmers. I mean, and farming isn't, you know, when I came to this 50 years ago, I moved here, farming was like, you know, not, you know, you did not want to be a farmer. And the young people here, this is their vision, this is their future, and they're really holding on it, and they understand at some gut level, the people who are moving here sort of understand what, this whole conversation that we're having is about.
Arnold?
Yes, thank you, Anja. No, just to say that I absolutely agree with the idea of confronting and challenging the corporations. And in fact, I would say that there's more urgency, not today. If you look at the global developments, you see corporations tightening their control over global governance of food and agriculture. You look at what's happening in the UN Food System Summit, where corporations are trying to take over the narrative and agenda in setting the future of food and agriculture. So and let me share that in relation to that, PAN-AP, the Asian Peasant Coalition, and along with 16 other global and regional networks, have started this campaign we call the Global People's Summit for a just, equitable, healthy, and sustainable food systems. It is our counter to the Food Systems Summit of the UN, which the corporations have taken over. Through the Global People Summit, we hope to contribute in the building and strengthening of a global movement that will challenge the monopoly control of TNCs over food and agriculture, and in the process pave the way for community efforts such as localization. I can share in the chat the link for this campaign, so those who are interested could take a look and perhaps join us.
Yes,
Arnold, I would love to know, Arnold, are you connected to Pat Mooney and the Long Food Movement in this work?
No, not yet.
Well,
not yet.
we'd love to connect you because I think they're trying to do something similar. And this, again, I also want to say that when it comes to hyper-local, we feel that the very core of hyper-local is encouraging people to build a face-to-face group, anything from 3 to maybe 20 people. And this relates to what you were saying, Patricia, about resilience, that the resilience that we need is that coming together to change the I to a we at that deep interpersonal level. And I want to encourage all of you to promote this if you haven't already been part of helping to build that core, truly hyperlocal group, which should be people who live near enough to each other so that they can meet regularly to build the deeper sense of self, face-to-face, vulnerable, imperfect. It strengthens people. It gives them energy. It gives them the resilience that Patricia is talking about to then together be able to support each other. The New Age movement has been promoting therapies that are a bit like this, that they are expensive workshops where you pay a lot of money to come together, often with people you're never going to see again. We're talking about building the foundation of what it is to be human and to feel recognized, heard, and seen. And with that process, being willing to explore this bigger picture of this system and being willing to share that and to work together against it. So I think that very personal core of the hyperlocal is a very important part of this work. And I really look forward to us having more conversations. And I think Debra's recommendation too, that we meet probably in slightly, well, actually this size of group is probably doable, even on Zoom. We're a bit sad that we can't meet with the whole group because of the time differences. So it's very difficult, of course, to organize anything globally when some people have to be up at midnight and others early in the morning. But we definitely intend to continue with these conversations and to keep building this type of collaboration. And it's going to have to be nested a little bit like you said, Chris, the nesting of really building the truly meaningful local structures, as I was just saying, starting with the deep psychological, spiritual, personal, but then extending to the practical and the local food economy being central, vital part of it, but then nesting into bigger networks. one problem for us, Chris, is that the New Economy Coalition and many of these groups are not actually promoting localization. So, and we feel that that will come about through deeper ecological wisdom and deeper spiritual and psychological wisdom, which is often missing in the movements concerned with the economy. And often those, as I was saying also, Arnold, the movements that are critiquing the TNCs generally have not been very focused on that inner work. So a very important part of this work is truly bringing together the inner and the outer, and in a way that is not some kind of commercial new age spirituality, but nor is it a type of angry anti-movement that doesn't recognize how much there is to cherish, even without the localization movement. We need to be encouraging everyone to appreciate every moment of life around them, to appreciate the miracle of life, really, for us, is at the center of this movement. So Anja, thank you so much. Anja has been helping to bring together this program this year and done an amazing job working night and day, but loving it, haven't you, Anja? Haven't you loved being in touch with these wonderful people?
That has been my favorite part. That has been meeting all of you, and most of you and a lot of other people also that haven't been on this call and the other call, because we couldn't include everybody. As I said, I thought we were very privileged that we were so many. So it's been an amazing opportunity for me to learn about a lot of initiatives and new campaigns and, you know, fellow men and women who are doing really good things. And I mean, I like everybody. I'm sure we often end up feeling really depressed about the state of the world. But I have to say that this few last 6 weeks and all the work that went before with communicating with all of you and has made me think that there's a lot of hope. So that has been keeping me happy, and I'm really interested in furthering what we are doing here as much as we can, and find ways, you know, obviously find ways of doing it so that it helps everybody, because we're all very busy and very occupied. But I'm already sort of picking up on opportunities, skills, tools, and lots of things I'm sure haven't heard about yet, but that each of you have, and that you are driving, and that can help others. And, you know, for example, what you were mentioning, Manga, here on this call that I hadn't heard about before, and the campaign that you are driving, Arnold, and well, not you alone, but and so forth. And I think, you know, if we were to pool our brains and our resources, and of course, finding a process to do it. And I think it's really good that you, Debra, offered to help with that, and Michelle also, you know, and I'm sure others will chip in. Maybe we can do it, because, you know, Local Futures, we do a lot, but we are quite small. So it's also our human resources can only stretch so far, right? And
I think the idea also of this nesting, you know, you will also, all of you, once you put on these new lenses of global to local, you will discover so much more happening locally than you realized. So it's so important to get close to the ground. And it's quite, we have to be a bit schizophrenic, because we need to keep more of that left brain alert to what's going on in this global system. But at the same time, at least part of the day or part of the week, really start appreciating and become, first of all, slowing down ourselves and really savoring life itself, but then discovering how much more is happening right around you that you didn't know about is such a joy. And part of what will happen is that as people start doing that, we get more nesting, and people start identifying and documenting and making visible, as Thais was saying, these stories that are not seen. There really is the potential for major change. We have the big challenge in front of us, probably the biggest of all, is how can we share that information? Even locally, the dominant system is blocking the communication that we need to see. So we have to be aware of that. And the dominant system is all the time trying to influence what we do. There is definite co-optation of local as well. But we very much appreciate any further thoughts on the language that I suppose the systemic directions that we've identified are still, even after our conversation today, I think it probably is the best framing. But whether you call it local or even in English, going local or localized, I think those are still trying to show the importance of place and the importance of moving away from the dependence on this global consumer culture. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to the patient people that have been listening to us, and all those people that will be watching this recording afterwards, because of course this is where it gets out, is when we share the recordings. And we're also gonna find ways of do compilations of materials from all of you. That's an idea. You know, we find that from last year, snippets from different webinars, from different videos, it's a really, really good way of getting, you know, picking out highlights and sharing it. We've had great success with that, and that's what we're planning to do after we had the rest. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. So good to meet
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for being
Happy Localization
here.
Day.
Yeah, happy World Localization Day.
Happy Localization.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.